Hi, Misha here, and belated Happy New Year. Happy 2023. If you haven't noticed, I've taken a little bit of a break, about a week off. Partially, I was out of town. Partially, just needed a rest, and also needed to get caught up on main Misha Go channel videos. But now that I have 3 or 4 of those knocked out, I thought I would do a personal channel. And as you know, I've been playing with lightsabers. And the whole thing, part of it is I do like the in-universe Star Wars aspect. This is the Episode 3 Anakin skinnyflex, or youngling slayer inspired. And this is an Episode 4 Obi-Wan inspired. So kind of the original. In fact, this was the most ornate saber hilt in the original movie, Star Wars. That movie. So, that I would kind of tell you what I've learned. And I did take 3 or 4 of these down for New Year's with my family, and I think everyone had a lot of fun. Take a look. Hang on. Okay, that's all I can show you because for most of the night music was playing. Dancing was probably done. And yes, Fox did do the Rainbow Blade with It's Raining Men, because of course not. The problem is, this is YouTube, so copyright, so oh well, you know how it goes. But everyone had a good time. And we actually didn't break any blades, I think. So, I want to talk about something that was really bugging me that I finally got an answer to a couple of weeks ago. Why are these different? Let me explain. These are supposed to be Xenopixel. But my first to buy, like I said, was this Imperial Workshop. And when I was going to your standard Xenopixel videos and websites talking about controls, I noticed that while some controls were working on this, others weren't. And this had some features that Xenopixel didn't, and vice versa, and I could access some things and other things. I was very confused. What was in this Imperial Workshop hilt? And then after picking this up, I got a couple of others, namely from Dark Wolf here, which is a partner with LGT, and they were standard. This was the oddball. In some ways it felt like it was a Proffie, in other ways a Xenopixel. And I could not find anyone online addressing what the crud's going on with the Imperial Workshop cores. So I figured it out for you. Let me explain. These are both Neopixel. That means it uses a blade like this that has several, well over 100 usually, LED lights in it, and it uses a pin connector here, and there's all kinds and styles and types and pros and cons. Sometimes the brightest are the most fragile, the dimmest are the most durable. There's a light, medium, heavy for dueling, yada yada. Now most people that really want to duel still do RGB in hilt, where you have typically 3 LEDs really bright, like a big bright flashlight in the hilt, and they just shine through basically a hollow tube with some reflecting stuff inside. But this is the next step up. That's the Neopixel. The Xenopixel is the so-called soundboard, or I'd think of it as a motherboard. And this is a true Xenopixel V2. This isn't. This, after a lot of investigation, is what is kind of informally known as an almost Proffie prophecy board. Even though on the Imperial Workshop website they call it a Xenopixel V2.2. Here's another Imperial Workshop. This is the one you saw in the first video with Fox. I grabbed it because it's easier to take apart. You'll see in a minute. Let me do this while I talk with you. Back in 2018, the Proffie was released. Specifically, it went on sale in August of that year and quickly sold out. It was an open source, highly customizable and updatable board. It was based on the older teensy Saber system. I'm trying to think who it made. I think it was a Frederick Hunet that made it. Sorry, pronunciation. See how this just comes apart very easily. Just same screw you'd use for your blade. And Proffie really took it by storm and pretty much trounced the competition. It about the only one left today from back then is Crystal, and it just super embarrasses the Disney Parks and Hasbro Black Series. Normally I would go with officially licensed, but I've handled the Black Series and nope. Just undid my Covertech wheel here. So there's 3 screws in total, 2 of basically the same size, 1 different. And from that point, we just kind of shake this down and our core will come out. Here we go. This is the core of a Saber. So Proffie came out. Open source, not inexpensive, and really just dominates the market even today, especially because it's highly customizable. It's also somewhat complex and daunting for people that aren't into computer programming. So take that for what you will. Much more recently, Xenopixel came out. And this is a closed source board. And some of the big differences, for example, on this one, we have a port up here for a plug-in to charge. No USB, some later ones would. And we have an SD card. Typically, Proffie, you would tether it to your computer and program that way. That also was Bluetooth accessible. Again, you could program Proffie however you wanted. A lot of custom builds. Almost sky's the limit, frankly. This was more confined, but that's not a bad thing because they came easier to access out of the box. You pull this SD card out, always making sure to take your battery out first, because one thing these don't seem to have that some of your higher end cores do is a cutoff switch, a kill switch. They really need it. But just pop your battery out. It's like a big lithium ion version of a AA battery. And then you can easily pop this tray out, and just a little slide thing here. It comes with a very big SD card. In the beginning, Xenopixels came with 12, 20 fonts. Now they're up over 30. And you can add, remove, subtract, edit config files. So there's a lot of preset stuff you can do. Still gives it a lot of flexibility, but you kind of have to pick from the designs that are already on here. Typically, there's 6 or 7 blade styles, 9 or 10 ignition preon styles, and you can set times, motion controls, can be set turned on and off. You can't make new controls, but you can turn the ones that are there on and off. And it does have support for multiple blades. And you can, like I said, add and remove sounds. You can make color presets. It's pretty good for someone who's not a serious programmer or Saber person, because it's more good to go out of the box. And there's something to be said for simplicity, because it means that, well, there's less to go wrong. But this is a computer. Proffie is a 32-bit processor system, 44 kilohertz sound is standard. So, kind of like a PlayStation 1, maybe PlayStation 2 early on in here. And again, 16 gig SD card, you can put bigger ones in if you need to, but you'll never will. You can fit well over 100 fonts, and trust me, you do not want to cycle through that many. In fact, with mine, I typically pull fonts off, not put them on. As you see, the batteries can pop out easily if you have extra batteries for recharging. Early on, a lot of hilts were two button, but more recently single buttons kind of come into use. And once you get used to it, it's not so bad. And several blades will fit. There's two basic sizes we'll talk about in a minute. Anyway, so that's Proffie, and Xenopixel is kind of the budget version. But as we're about to see when I plug these all in, these are different. This has a lot of controls, just like our Obi up here, that are almost Proffie, but then when you go to program it, it programs like a Xeno. What is this? This has essentially the same core in here. The only big difference is the connector is up here, so there's a cord running for the skinny neck, the thin neck. What happened early on in the Xenopixel's life, there was a run that was a mistake. What they did, they made a hybrid board. It had some elements of the new Xenopixel and some elements of the Proffie. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Unfortunately, some websites marketed it at the time as a Proffie board, and they weren't 100% wrong. It seemed like a Proffie, but it wasn't, and the price was cheaper, but yeah, there was a whole hullabaloo some time ago. Of course, now it's gotten straightened out, and to be fair to Imperial Workshop, they are marketing theirs as Xenopixel the 2.2, which is a little odd because the current version of Proffie is 2.2. The current version of our, where did I put her? I don't know. Current version of Xenopixel is version 2. So basically what Imperial Workshop did is they hybridized using Xenopixel and the Proffie version together, which is a lot better than trying to call it a Proffie. They do not, so I don't think it's a problem with them. Although previous websites that tried to market this core as a Proffie, yeah, that's a little shady. But I'm not sure if it was out of ignorance or greed and malice. I don't want to subscribe poor motives to just ignorance. But either way, that's in the past. That's what's going on here. These boards were honestly pre-production, and if they weren't produced by mistake, they were released by mistake. They, according to a few different people, were never supposed to be released. They are never supposed to be sold on the market for various legal and technical reasons. And most other websites don't offer them anymore. They're gone. But it is a limited run. They seem to have found their way to Imperial Workshop. Kind of interesting. And so it does give them an interesting board. And so finally, after wondering for quite a while why this was different, I know. It's a almost Proffie board. And as far as I know, up till the beginning of 2023 here, if any of their things you buy will have these kind of unique to them boards in them, for better or worse. Unfortunately, it's a fixed supply. So once they wear out, burn out, or they run out, they'll have to go to something else. And of course, with computers, anything with a computer in it will break eventually, or just straight up malfunction. But with that, let's start putting this together, put one of these in, and show you the differences that kind of keyed me in that something was a little weird. And again, if you know more, have more of the story, please do post in the comments below. You know how I was saying at the beginning of the video that any computer will crash? Yeah, I'm re-recording the last 10 minutes because the GoPro crashed and I didn't know it. And this is a new GoPro, an 11, with a clean SD card. It happens, especially when batteries and SD cards are involved. Be patient. When one of these will crash on you, the solution is much the same as it was for this GoPro. Turn it off if you can. If not, pull the battery and give it a few seconds and reinsert battery and try again. In fact, I had that happen earlier today with a different Saber, and now with the GoPro. Anyway, blades installed. Now there's two styles. Sorry, my cord's in the way. There's two styles you get. This is the simple Allen key and the larger size. There's also a smaller one you sometimes get, for example, with the Dark Saber for disassembling further, but sometimes you don't need it. And this is kind of considered the deluxe style. Truth is, though, I kind of like this one better. It seems a little more rigid. It's a little shorter. I feel like it gives me a little fine control. This one, because I'm gripping the plastic, not the metal itself, I don't feel like I get quite the feedback, the tension kind of feeling. Plus, this section, being so long and narrow, just seems like it wants to bend and flex on me, and a bent Allen key is bad news. That said, in the field, I can see where this would be easier. You're not going to lose it, and it's probably easier to grip if you have gloves on. And sometimes you might need to get deep into something where it's hard to make a shorter driver like this work. Either way, these are actually among my favorite sabers. The Imperial Workshop quasi or semi-proffie, or as they call it, Xenopixel V2.2 on top. This is an Obi one, like I said. And on the bottom, the Darkwolf LGT, which is a Xeno V2. This sits very deep, the blade. In fact, you only really need one screw, although there are a couple of smaller screws you can use, but it sits so deep. And this is kind of the reverse. This has 4 screws because it sits so shallow. Some have said only use 2 of them, kind of on each side, and press it up against. I haven't had good luck with that. I've tried it several times. What do you do? Both of these are 36-inch blades. However, because, again, this sits so deep in the hilt, it sucks it up quite a bit and makes it look more like a 34, maybe even 32, which I like. This is very stable. This one, honestly, will get wiggly. And also, this cup and the top will unscrew, but that's the case for any of these thin neck sabers. And I do kind of prefer the skinnyflex over the original. Sorry, don't shoot me. And I know these aren't exactly right. This is in episode 4. Sorry, this is in episode 3. Oh well, we'll be okay. One final thing. This is a 1-inch Neopixel blade. This is a 7/8, and that shouldn't. It feels bigger than it is. And there's a time and a place for both. This is more original trilogy style, kind of the fat pulsing blade. This is more the newer style, prequels or rebels, where it's more of a thin, more solid blade. But anyway, enough with the jawing. Let's turn off the main lights and turn on these lights and talk about kind of what got me started on figuring out what the crap is in the Imperial Workshop. Okay, it's a little funny. I turned off the lights, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is the sound. But it's me. I'm blind. So sound is the first thing I noticed. The LGT here, the Dark Wolf, like every other LGT I found, has basically 3 settings. And to access when the blade is turned off, but the hilt is on, you just hold down for 1 second. Yeah, mute.
Volume high.
That hurts my ears.
Volume low.
Low's okay. Now, if you want to get better, finer adjustment, you can go into the config file and change the volume further, making your high higher or your low lower or whatever. But that's how you do it. What confused me with this one, it didn't work. If you hold down for 1 second,
I've been looking forward to this.
you just change settings. So how do you do it on this? Well, you have to hold down the button briefly, and
Volume level 2.
it puts you into a menu.
Volume level 3. Volume level. Volume level. Volume level 6. Volume level 7.
I outran it. You can kind of
Volume
get
level.
get
Volume level 9.
Ow.
Volume level 10.
That's the loudest.
Volume muted.
1 is mute.
Volume level 2.
And when you're done, you need to hold down and whack it. And then I usually like to just hold it down until it shifts. And then turn it on just to make sure. Because sometimes getting out of that menu can be a little tricky for some folks. So I do like that the Imperial version gives you 2 through 10 plus mute. This is just high and low. plus mute. On the other hand, this is easier to access for the LGT Dark Wolf. On the other hand, it's also easier to sometimes accidentally do. This is harder to get into the mode with the Imperial, but at the same time, it's also sometimes harder to get out, especially if you don't have the blade installed. That was the first thing. I'm like, what the crap's going on? The only other types of blade that had a similar, not the same, but a similar sound style were the Proffie 2.2s. But this isn't a Proffie because Proffies don't typically use SD cards. They use a USB connection and you can program them. Inside, it has a Xenopixel style config file. So this is really what kind of piqued my curiosity, and then I noticed more and more differences. Now the motion control to turn on is the same, just twist sharply to the right and then left, or you can just press the button once. There's the Imperial. Here is the Dark Wolf. Damn it. See, that's what I mean. You can accidentally do it.
Volume high.
I just was talking with you and not focusing, and yeah. Anyway, then we have two blue blades. If you click the button once, they both do blaster. And for the Dark Wolf, if you hold it down for a couple of seconds, you start the tip drag. And to stop that noise that could get annoying very quickly, just click it again. With the Imperial, holding it down didn't do anything. That's because, kind of like with the sound, the tip drag effect, well, it's here, but you have to hold down your button, and there you go. So it's a very similar effect, but it's more action-oriented. And of course, again, just to click it, stop it. Both do have a Saber lock as such as well. Both do have kind of force,
Color change
or we'll do that instead, color change. We'll talk about that in a minute. Stop it. Stop it.
color selected.
Sure, why not? I was going to say both have kind of force effect. See? And music too. If some have little blade effects and stuff. It's neat. So there's some more differences in how those controls work. Let's turn the blades off again. You can just do this. And now let's talk about some other menu options. Thinking that the Imperial was a typical Xenopixel, I was trying to change blade style and the pre-on, pre-offs from the hilt. And I went to several videos and they said, hold down for 2 seconds,
I've become more powerful than
3 seconds.
You will.
And it just kept doing that. Which is kind of nice. It's faster to change, but I couldn't find the way to get into the pre-on and blade settings. But everyone else with standard Xenopixels was. Let me show you with this one, if I can. You're lucky I'm at least partially ambidextrous. If you hold down for 2, or 1, so
Volume high.
you can accidentally do it. One nice thing about only having 3 settings, it doesn't take you too long to cycle through. So let's go for 2 long seconds. See, pulsy blade.
Rainbow blade.
Fox's favorite.
Candy blade.
So yeah, those are your blade settings. And if you want to go to the next font,
The Dark Empress.
you're no longer stuck to that. They're just tied to that one blade. Now, that was 2 long seconds. If you do 3 long seconds,
Blaster blade.
you can change the style. or the Prion. This is Blaster. This one bugs me because it makes me think my blade is broken half the time. Ghost Blade's kind of the similar. So we're still on Ghost, so when that was more of the 2 second long. So you have those 2 settings. There we go. That was kind of cool. And they do have their own sounds and stuff too. And again, 4 seconds will change your font. So that was like, what the crap? Why can I not do this? I knew I could do it in the config file. I had done it, but I wanted to do it on the fly. But on the other hand, the sound was different. So I kind of felt like, well, the Imperial doesn't let me change as much on the go, but I do like the sound. And then the LGT is kind of the flip. I would like maybe low, medium, high plus mute, at least 4, because high, low is just kind of eh. But that was another thing that just really clued me in. What else is there? Well, color change is also different. And there's a couple of different ways of doing each of these, as you saw. Let's pick up the Dark Wolf first. We need it on. Basically, we hold for 2 seconds with the blade on, and it will change. Now, there's 2 versions of this. There's this one where it gradually changes. And you can select your color. There's also one that quickly changes. Oh, I'm not sure completely how to do it. Let's see if I can do it on camera for you. Because I've done it accidentally, but that's the sound mode. Like I said, there is an easier way to change sound modes, but it's a little more finicky. Oh well. This goes to show you can either do kind of a quick change mode that jumps from major color to major color, or you can do that gradual change by just holding down for 2 seconds and then clicking it. Our Imperial is different. This is going to be real fun to do left-handed. And again, this kind of involves motion and direction more than just buttons, like on the Xeno. Turn it on. Point it down, hold your button, and twist. I do like that it tells you. And this is more the rapid mode, but what's even nicer, if you put it more on a horizontal level, you get that fine adjustment mode. Let me just lay it down here maybe, if I can. These things get really hard to maneuver. Basically, get off my other saber, thank you. When you rotate it, it shifts colors, so you can really dial it in. The Xeno has the same basic adjustments, but instead of you rotating it yourself, it rotates on its own. I would say this is a little bit better of a mode. It's easier to get to both, and you can kind of point it back down again if you want to go to the quick change. So overall, it's a little better. Plus, it also lets you know when you have it selected. Little audio cue. Now, all the noises these make, even the kind of computer voice, can be changed. They're just WAV files on the SD card. So you could make it a belching Jabba the Hutt if you wanted. That would be one type of selection. So, you know, in some ways the LGT is easier, but the Imperial may be a little more user-friendly, just requires more motion-y, control-y things. So it's interesting. The kind of controls of the Imperial remind me more of a Proffie, but it has the same kind of software as a standard Xeno. And they both have kind of, if you hit them, and they can do like I said, blade lock and all that stuff. All that's the same. And they can support all kinds of blade lengths. I think the shortest I've seen is 20 inches, and the longest is 36. You can just, plug and play, but if you want full effects like tip drive, you need to go into the config file and tell it basically how long its blade is so it knows where to talk to the pixels at. And you can put different blades in, different colors. They even take a few different types of batteries with different power outputs for brightness. After all, it's basically a light bulb. So all that is just very customizable. Something weird about Luke's blade coming out of a skinnyflex.
The third hunter.
Which is kind of strange about LEDs in general. Neopixel is sometimes red will kind of look orange on camera, even in real life to some people.
That's a mirror. Will be your grave.
Both of them have the same preon effects and blade effects. So that's not a difference. I don't think if there's any other differences I've noticed so far. But, yeah, there you kind of have it. And you'll find both diameters, inch and 7/8 in both styles. So that's not something. And the hilts would seem to be made the same. I think a lot of them are 89 Sabers and other things, and most just Chinese. So it's hilt is all the same, and they both take the same type of SD card. I think 16 gigs is what they come with, but typically these come with 34 fonts right now installed, and that's only about 1, sometimes up to 2 gigs. So plenty of space, even with WAV files, because the config files are very small. Well, what do you think? Now you're back in the light. So removing the blade is quite easy, especially on the skinnyflex here. There's just one central screw that I screwed down, which is frankly enough for this blade. You don't need to remove the screw all the way, just pull it out. It fits nice and snug. For some reason it does seem like the 7/8 fit a little snugger. I can't remember if I turned this off or not. Let's find out. I did not. One thing I'll show you since it's on. I'm surprised the batteries lasted this long after the weekend. It does have some lighting in the blade. A lot of the newer ones do. There's also an aux button. But I've noticed that 2-button configurations have kind of fallen out of favor. Even full Proffies are single button now. To turn it off, you just hold down.
The third hunter.
The only negative is it will switch to the next font. Now, if the blade's on, it won't, so you can turn it down. And it usually takes 10 seconds, but you can adjust that down to 5 or 6 if you want. Probably didn't turn this one off either. Nope. Let me show you then. With the blade on, you can hold down. It'll turn it off. Keep holding.
Powering down.
And now you are still on the same font. Yeah. Like I said, this one has 4, so it takes a little bit more to remove it. There we go. Didn't want to embarrass myself by trying to remove it on camera. When you put these screws in, they will kind of mar the edges, but that's just kind of a film on the outside. You're not actually cracking through. But don't tighten down too much. Just do it enough where it doesn't wiggle, because marring up the edge here isn't good. What's even worse is swinging it around and throwing your blade clear across the room or yard. So of the two, I'll make a little dent at the bottom if I have to. You see how shallow this is. Those are connectors. And how deep this is. You can also install blade plugs if you want, but unless you kind of custom fit them. This is the CoverTech wheel, and this is the original style D-wing. Fun fact, I actually used a rivet from an AK for this. These little cards slide up and down. They need to be removable to get to the screw underneath for disassembly, so you don't want to glue it in. But this one was a little loose, so I put a rivet. It had a spring back here, but I put a rivet for an AK. I also put a washer on this clamp here. This on the original Graflex style thing was not Graflex, but you know, gun type thing was. Not sure if it's meant to be a belt clip or just a screw retainer, but either way, I put a little washer that I had. So there's actually a couple of gun parts in this, which kind of seems suiting for me. I like it though. Classic. It's one of the bigger hilts too, more ornate. A little more convoluted though. Of course, this isn't far behind. This actually does have kind of rubber or soft plastic grip. I like that. This is all metal. To get to inside, they're very easy. Let me show you real quick. This video is not going to be too much about that. That comes off. This pommel also comes off on screws. Some people like to have a non-vented one for display to look even more correct. This CoverTech wheel is just screwed on. You can take it off too. And inside we see our battery here, lithium-ion. And on the flip side, we have our SD card. As I said at the beginning, do not remove this with the battery in place. Some more advanced boards like Full Proffie have a kill switch. I really hope they add that to Xenopixel when the next version comes out. Here's our speaker. Typically you'll find 22, 23, 24 millimeter speaker, although some people have up to 28. Of course, that will draw more power. To further disassemble this, you have to open this card up. There's a screw that lets this clamp come off, and it all comes off, and your core comes out. This emitter unscrews. And that's kind of your components. These are all pretty standardized. You have the pommel, the grip part, you have the upper grip part, if you will, the chassis part. Then you have the clamp, which not all of them have. Then you have the emitter part. These are very modular and standardized. Most of the screws are pretty standard. For example, for your I don't like to over tighten it. There are shims too if you want to tighten to a certain point and time a certain way. But up here, there's usually a long screw and a short screw. They give you both to use. And like I said, this one has little screws here if you wanted to use them. I guess if you were really planning on dueling, but I never found them necessary. And they do require the smaller driver. This one, on the other hand, all 4 screws are the standard size. And there's another one down below for the emitter to come off. And what's nice is you don't even have to remove the full grip piece here. This does unscrew up here, but you don't need to do that for charging. You can just actually unscrew the pommel. Boop. And yeah, you can see your speaker, but more importantly, you have access to your SB power port. Now this is not a data port, it's just a power port to charge your battery. The warning's everywhere, but it's worth repeating. Yeah, don't plug it into a wall socket unless the adapter is, what, 50 volts or half amp, 1 amp at most, yada yada yada. Even if you plug it into a computer, a USB, make sure it's not overpowered. Basically, just be careful where you plug these in. Too little power is better than too much. Also, don't leave it on overnight if you can help it. These should take 2, maybe 4 hours to charge. I would take it off. Better to have a maybe slightly undercharged battery than risking it, because if the battery's full, too much power, it can start cooking little pieces on your board, because this is essentially a computer. So better safe than sorry. That said, parts will wear out internally. Eventually computers break, fry up. The SD card will sometimes malfunction. The best thing to do is use your backup and just format the card and put your backup back on, and that will fix a lot of issues, a lot of quirks, especially with sound. But, you know, you gotta expect that in 20 years these computers inside won't be working. Hopefully there'll be replacements. Speaker might still be good, but if nothing else, you have a neat hilt, and they're meant to be modular and interchangeable at that rate. So, which style do you like? And I don't really mean of the hilts. When it comes to the Darkwolf LGT, pretty much the same as lots of others, they make pretty much all kinds of custom and replicas. You can get anything. And you saw the features, pros and cons. This is the official standard Xenopixel V2. There will be a V3 coming out in hopefully 2023. We'll see. It'll have some more features. I think it's going to have a real plasma blade. What do you think? The Imperial, they don't have a lot of sabers. I don't remember on the website. I'm thinking they have maybe 8 styles, and most of them are not replicas. This is one of the few they do that's a replica. On the other hand, they seem to have them all in stock in the USA down in Florida. With a lot of places like Sabers, they're all coming from China. It seems like once upon a time Dark Wolf kept quite a bit of inventory up in New York, but now, probably because of demand, he too is having things drop shipped from China, which is fair. He admits it. There's a section on his site that actually tells you what is in stock in the USA versus what will be coming from overseas, so you can decide. But I found that DHL worldwide shipping is pretty darn great. Imperial uses UPS. So this is using the standard Xenopixel. This is using what they call Xenopixel 2.2, but what we would call almost Proffie. The problem, as I said at the beginning, these boards were a mistake, an early version, and according to some, they were supposed to be recalled. They're not defective as such, they just never were supposed to get into the wild. Yet, I've even seen them called counterfeit or kind of bootleg boards, which is kind of funny considering all of this is a little bit bootleg, considering Disney, yeah, you know what I mean. But Imperial Workshop is using them. I wonder though, this is a finite supply, the 2.2 style as they call it. Once they run out, they'll have to switch over to a standard Xenopixel or a standard Proffie. Maybe by that time, Xenopixel 3 will be out and they can do that. But in the interim, while several places were selling the almost Proffie, that seems to have kind of gone away in the last year, and it seems like Imperial Workshop bought the stock. I'm wondering if they're actually installing these here, because again, they all come from the US. If they just bought a bunch of hilts and they've got a bunch of cores, these are simple to slap together. A lot of them require soldering. I don't know. There are pros and cons to each. Again, I'm talking about the features, not the hilts themselves. I do like that on the standard Xenopixel you can change a lot of things on the fly. On the other hand, with the almost Proffie, I do like the kind of Proffie style stuff. The very good sound adjustment. The somewhat easier to use color wheel. Don't know. Fonts don't really matter. Sounds don't really matter because those can be changed out. That said, I do kind of like the more simple robot voice to announce each font that tends to come on the LGTs. instead of having that, the Imperials tend to have more of a effects, a quote or a clip, or even sometimes music. Maybe I'm boring, but I kind of find that a bit annoying. Don't know. I'll tell you what, though. I am mostly picking up Dark Wolf, mostly because the owner, Johnny, has been super helpful to me, taking a lot of time out of his day. If you can't tell, I'm a very inquisitive person that asks a shitload of questions, and he's had a lot of patience with me. And I did have one defective hilt, or rather core, not hilt, and he was immediate to get me a replacement. It had to do with the battery. The connection wasn't good, so, it happens. Computers. So I can say firsthand his customer service has been great. It wasn't this one, by the way. It was a different one. And he answered it, so I would like giving him business. Plus, he has a lot of these inspired by or replica types. Imperial Workshop, on the other hand, I actually bought before meeting Johnny. This one, actually. And when I realized that the 2.2 boards would be a limited supply, I did go out and buy another one, because I do think this has some advantages. Again, it feels like Proffie, but with the kind of easy to use of the Xenopixel. In some ways, it is kind of the best of both worlds, but in other ways, it was a mistake. And again, Imperial Workshop only has a few different hilts, especially inspired replica styles. Another thing too, they are like a lot of the Saber people. They give promo codes to people. They send out free samples. The whole marketing thing. It's the way of things. Dark Wolf doesn't do that. He just sells them. And I kind of respect that more traditional, straightforward model. I'm not knocking anyone for promo codes. Why not? But, I don't know. Personally, I just like this style of business more. But not enough that would keep me from buying from other places if they had something I really wanted or a really good sale. So yeah, that was my New Year's. How was yours? A lot more Saber stuff will probably be coming, as well as other things. Just kind of bouncing back and forth. Wanted to get into something new. As I've said, I like the computer aspect of these and the sci-fi. And I will do more of an in-universe explanation. I want to do a video looking at different styles of lightsaber. And the evolution in-universe. And next time Fox is over, we'll do more of stuff with me in front of the camera and him in front of the camera with the Sabers. Because as I said, I did give him one for Christmas/New Year's gift. So we will have that, guys. Well, I'm getting a little hungry, so I'm going to go look for some lunch. Hope everyone's doing great in 2023. If you could, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any information on the Almost Proffies or the Xenopixels or own these, please do share below. Let's discuss. I do love chatting with folks. This is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.